Thank you so much for joining us for the VRAR Global Summit. This panel is the business of entertainment. I'm here today with three leaders in the entertainment sector who are going to talk to us about the challenges they face and the opportunities in VR for entertainment or XR for entertainment, and how they're approaching this each in their different ways. We're back from the Venice immersive program, and he's going to tell us about their program to go forward with a fully immersive event. We also have Seth Schachner, who's from Strat Americas, who's going to talk to us about his lengthy experience in interactive and online content programming and the future for XR entertainment across platforms. And finally, but not least, Tyler Wilson joins us today to talk about sports marketing and XR. So to kick us off right now is Michel Reilhac. Michel, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello.
Now, you were one of the pioneers when it came to first launching an immersive summit at the VR Film Fest, the Venice Film Festival. And tell us about how it was to arrive at a conclusion to create a film festival dedicated to virtual reality and 360 programs and environments. What kind of decision-making process was that, and how long ago was that?
The Venice Biennale is probably the oldest cultural institution in the world. It's publicly funded, and it works in visual arts, architecture, film, theater, music, and dance. And I started working with them, leading what is called the Biennale College, which is a residential workshop for filmmakers. And that was back in 2013. And at the time, I was focusing a lot on interactive storytelling. And that's when Oculus had its Kickstarter campaign. And then in 2014, they were purchased by Facebook. So I felt that this was going to be a major event, the advent of VR was going to be a major thing in the field of entertainment. So I started talking to the president of the Biennale and to the director of the film festival, telling them that we should get involved as Venice, and we should just start experimenting with showing what artists were starting to make in the field. They gave me the possibility in 2016 to run a test program by opening a VR lounge, VR theater, where we showed a few pieces. And it was a huge success, including with the film industry who was attending the festival. And so we decided that the year after, in 2017, we could go big. And we opened what is now known as the VR Island, an island that was completely abandoned in the middle of the Venice Laguna. And we revamped it for the 10 days of the festival into a high-tech hub for creative VR. And since 2017, we've been running this program, which to this day is the only official competition of VR content in the world within the frame of an A-list film festival.
So tell me, was there, I mean, I don't want to say the struggle internally, but was it difficult to convince people that this is really the a medium that was important and long lasting?
There was a lot of curiosity, and I would say that the business of the Biennale is artistic curiosity, and they've been showing this, but it is quite remarkable, and this is thanks to the creative mind of Alberto Barbera, the director of the film festival. They just were interested and intrigued. It wasn't that difficult. And then in 2016, as I was negotiating this, one of my first pieces that I made as a director, as a creator in VR, was selected at Sundance and was in the official selection of the VR content there at New Frontier. And so that allowed me, to just push my idea of starting this competition, because it became clear to the Venice team that it was going to happen indeed. The great thing with the Venice Biennale, which is known for its Biennale of fine arts and visual arts, and its Biennale of architecture that happen every other year, is that they, being the oldest festival in the world, Venice was the very first film festival in the world, being very respectable and anchored into this 75 years of tradition. They were able to challenge themselves with trusting me to embrace this new form of VR, and truly being the first major artistic organization recognizing VR and embracing VR as an art form. So I think what this allowed was the fact that we could offer a platform for immersive artists to show their work in the best possible way. And so the way we do that is that we show VR on this island called Lazzaretto Vecchio, and the rest of the year it's completely abandoned. It only comes alive when we are there and we are showing these immersive works within the walls of this of what used to be a place where people with the plague would be sent basically to die. So we're taking great care in making sure that the work is shown in as good as possible a way, with very good sound isolation. And it's also become a place where people meet. A lot of the people from the industry come there to meet. So it is a place where VR is really recognized and celebrated as a full-fledged art form on the exact same level as feature film.
I think that's wonderful. Can you tell us about, you're going to have an actual meeting space within the immersive platform, and it's not just going to be for the 360 environment, it's going to be for the entire fair transported. Is this also the vision for the rest of the entire Venice meeting infrastructure?
We're working on transporting the whole Venice VR expanded section, which is this the competition, the official competition with all of the immersive content online, onto an ad hoc virtual reality platform that we will be making especially for this. And that platform will allow two things. People will be able to see our whole selection of world premieres of immersive pieces in 360 videos, 3 DOF, 3 Degrees of Freedom, and 6 Degrees of Freedom. This will be a partnership with a few makers in the industry who will make it possible to go online and remotely access and participate in those VR experiences. But it will also be a platform where meeting other people will be easy and available through avatars. The first thing you will do as you spawn into the platform will be choosing the avatar that you will want to have during your time on the platform, and you will be then taken to this place where you can either go maybe on the left to the social events, the panels, and the meetings, and just casually meeting people who are there, just like it happens on the island physically the other years. And on the right, accessing the 40 or 45 pieces that we will be showing. This is quite a challenge, transporting a whole live event into a platform. It's a challenge because there are so many social platforms in VR that are available today. You need to identify which is the one that will work the best for the specific needs that you may have. And there's no...
Have you found it yet? Because there's so many.
Yeah,
it's very difficult. Everyone has their own specialty.
Yeah, there are like 40 or 45 of them. I spent the last 2 months, online visiting all these platforms and trying to assess the ones that would, fit our needs best. And the difficult thing is that you want something robust that is not going to bug, every every 5 minutes. So you need something robust. At the same time, you want the ability to be in that VR world with your avatar and feel comfortable. And you also want the interface with others or with whatever functionality are available on the platform to feel intuitive, that it's not a, it's a no-brainer. You know how to, you can pick it up. So yeah, it's a big challenge, and we're working on it.
Well, I'm excited because you're the first ones to do this and to take a major brand and to commit to creating a parallel space. And you said in our previous conversations that this is a strategic and structural change for you as a brand, as a huge entity. I mean, you're as big as, say, Art Basel or any of the other big global conferences that's so well known. And it's really an industry staple. So I think the world will be watching to see your results, and I wish you the best of luck. Now, the Venice Biennial is scheduled to go live between the 2nd and the 12th of September. Is that correct? Are those the dates?
That's correct. Yeah. But just a word on what you said, yeah. Catherine. This notion of going hybrid, in my mind, is a key thing for any event or any institution, any company now. Just the same as the fashion industry, has morphed into a hybrid industry with brick and mortar shops where you can go and try on the clothes, but as well, buying them online. I think, or the music industry, the same. That I think that any institution needs to think of itself as a hybrid in its own DNA from now on, being live, physical, and also remotely accessible.
I think that's a really good point, and I thank you so much. We're going to actually come back to that at the end when we're opening up to questions with everybody on the panel. I'd like to say thank you and stop us there and introduce now Seth Schachner from Strata Americas. Thank you, Michelle. And he is the head of Strata Americas. Hi, Seth. How are you?
Good morning. All good here. Good to be with all of you.
I'm so glad you're here with us today. Now, Seth, you've had a tremendous career in music and technology for a long time now. We're looking at the dawn of new platforms, and how does this compare to the dawn of YouTube, what we're seeing now, especially with Twitch and some of the gaming platforms taking on music? What does this look like to you?
I mean, it's a very different evolutionary rev, if you will, I think, than YouTube. I was at Sony Music for 11 years, and I remember when YouTube kind of came over us, hit us sort of on the head in a good way, a little differently than some of the pirated peer-to-peer services like Napster, which I was also at Jive Records desk when that happened as well. And yeah, I think the challenge for this medium set of experiences in general, it's I think Michelle it was an excellent kind of analysis and analogy, if you will, of the kind of the island off Venice. I was sorry to hear what people were being sent to that island for, but I think how you get that island closer to the core of the business and how it becomes a real business and get engagement. And I think sounds like the film festivals have done a very constructive job of it, is probably the key thing here. I mean, I think from my background's largely in digital music, and I've got a lot of work internationally in Latin America as well. This is a new platform and, an entirely new set of experiences. And I think, it's probably unfair to put it on the same stage as a YouTube, which is still one of the leading platforms for music consumption, and whether or not content owners like it actually has a real business model, whether it's advertising, support in a significant way, huge amounts of capital that can be layered into that from Google, and subscription businesses for audio and video. And I don't think it's even fair to put those things together. It's a lot slower of a ramp. But I think the real thing with XR, with VR and music, from what I'm seeing, is to kind of appreciate the medium on its own. And it really goes back to Michelle's point a little bit in terms of what experiences can you offer in that medium that offer something cool, unique, and different. And it's probably not repurposing an existing live concert, because you can watch that on broadcast or stream it. It's probably something that pulls on the the 3D aspects and the great technological aspects of the medium more than anything.
Now, in the COVID, this quarantine, the lockdown, if you will, we have seen a large migration over to the gaming platforms. And the reason why I stick with that is because we've seen a number of big headline artists from Reggie Watts and a number of others actually host live concerts on these. And they have been tremendously successful, especially with that core demographic of late millennials and Gen Z. So it tends to be that where music is, then advertising and everything else follows. So do you see these platforms like Twitch and Altspace and VRAR and others as really being new competition for the YouTubes of the world? And what does that mean for advertising and business generally?
Well, again, I'd move it away from YouTube just a little bit because I think YouTube is what it is. But look, I think I've spent quite a bit of time as a consultant in the area of what I'd call social music, basically, and it's a fascinating, everyone knows what TikTok is. I work for an app called Smule that we bring artists that it looks like it's live singing along. We really tape the artist, but and there's tons of others, Star Maker, Facebook Live, Instagram Live are doing all this, but it all kind of relates to artists meeting their audience in some way and connecting with them in a fashion that is different, more organic, more interactive than, say, just what you're getting from the canned recorded music, which is obviously the most, one of the most critical things. So I see that area as probably the most potent and maybe even disruptive to the ecosystem. And so I think TikTok's a good example. I think actually Smule is a great example. These are areas that are about that connectivity, and they have different business models as well. And what I'm starting to see, to get to your question, is things more like Fortnite, actually, in the gaming world, that are aggregating, these enormous audiences of gamers in a way that integrates music into the gaming platform. It's certainly gamified. It's got in-app purchasing from a business perspective, which is great. It's definitely got social components, and you're seeing, I think, music and artists integrated in the programming in a cool, different, contextual way. I mean, the Travis Scott thing that just happened a couple of weeks ago on Fortnite's probably the biggest and best example of this, where he did, the Travis Scott avatar, if you will, that appeared, right, was on a beach as a giant, figure. I think it was 4 or 5 tracks, one of which was a new single. So there's a breaking, promotional component of it. Something like 28 million, audience members, 45 million in aggregates. The numbers are off the charts. So that to me is the biggest thing. I mean, certainly Twitch has got live streaming. So we're in a blip right now. The whole business of entertainment, from film festivals to production to music to concert tours, which have been decimated, are disrupted now. So live streaming from home is clearly something that is on the rise. And my experience with Twitch has actually been wonderful. While I've been sitting on the bike or whatever, discovered artists directly, which is, I think, what it's supposed to be about, and paid them directly too with Venmo or that sense of loyalty. But I think the challenge there is also similar to that island effect, which is how you get this to scale. So I don't think there's any question. I think what we're seeing with Fortnite and some of the gaming platforms that are aggregating audiences are probably the biggest piece of kind of the new stuff that's happening.
It sounds like they're almost like two different streams, if you will, and you'll excuse the term streams. I don't mean it that way in a technical way, but they're two different branches. So there's the TikTok, which really brings the interactivity that we're missing from Instagram and that fun feeling. I think that we're in a kind of a post-maximalist world in which people really want that connectivity. They want the realism. They want that moment together. And it also gives the sense of discovery, because you can go through all these channels and discover amazing talent. And then on the other hand, you have the Fortnites and the Altspaces of the world that already have a captive audience. But, again, during the pandemic, we've also seen a shift away from, say, some of the more hardcore violent games. I mean, Minecraft is effectively architecture, right? So, and integrating more of the social aspect, which gives us that interactivity in a three-dimensional world. So I feel as if both are moving towards interactivity in a very definitive way. The question is, which one is going to merge the most successfully, and then how do brands and advertisers meet them there with either branding and content and other things. How do you see that playing out?
Well, look, I mean, on the advertising side, you need scale, right? If you're an advertiser, you're looking at, there's big players like Facebook and Google you're still going to look to, I would imagine, if you're doing a media spend. So I think you're really going to need scale. But I think some of these gaming players we're seeing with Fortnite, I mean, that's mostly about purchasing things in app, basically, which is a little different of a model. As are, by the way, some of the social media players, social music players I'm talking about don't even have advertising. They just are premium subscription models. So I think there's a little bit of a ways to go. I mean, I would couple things. I mean, so Next VR is a platform here. I'm in LA in Southern California that's been around for a few years that I think had built a very impressive roster of sports programming, which we're going to get to in a bit. But also had dabbled a little bit in music. Now Apple just bought them, and so I'm a business development person. That's what my background is. How do you build digital media businesses, make them bigger, generate audience, generate revenue? And I think the real thing with this XR space that I've seen, I've worked for some audio technologies, 3D audio that are in the VR spaces. It's sometimes hard to bring this up in a biz dev meeting because it doesn't have scale and it may not really produce immediate revenue, whether it's advertising or content revenue for a content owner. So it's sometimes hard to prioritize that if you're trying to get it through the clutter. Maybe this Apple acquisition of NextVR will be a really big game changer. I mean, I know they built the business that I worked in, digital music, and they were a very big contributor to the building blocks of it in a very constructive way. So I think that's very positive. And if Apple brings out a headset or an AR strategy, product component that popularizes this, then I think a lot of the questions you're asking are going to become clearer. I mean, I think I'll just throw in something that you didn't ask, but we had a massive player for the last 4 or 5 years called Magic Leap that I think was billed as world changing, and they've kind of pulled back, as I understand it, almost entirely from a consumer strategy and are being an enterprise player right now, which is very legitimate, but I think says something about these lines of content businesses that we're talking about developing here. So, I'd look to see a big player coming in and popularizing this, and bringing it out to the masses before some of those questions you're asking are really going to become clear.
Yeah, I mean, I think the next VR is definitely an exciting case study, and I'm looking forward to that really with anticipation. I guess, as somebody who's working very closely in the strategy, talking about virtualization strategies with companies that are trying to figure out what all these different platforms. I mean, Michelle pointed out some of the challenges in even selecting platforms, where to meet and what to do in each one of these different platforms, and equally the social platforms, which are going to be the next default places to advertise, to congregate, to promote things, and what does that content look like? And I think that's going to be very interesting, especially if we're looking at cross-platform. But you're an expert on the streaming wars, so I wanted to ask you about the outlook there. So if you were to say sort of the silver lining to all of this, in terms of, okay, we've been under lockdown, what's the silver lining to come out from all of this in terms of the evolution of these new platforms and new technologies?
That's a great question. I know we kicked around these ideas earlier. Look, I think, hopefully we all pull through this time sooner rather than later, because this period of a pandemic has obviously disrupted everyone. Obviously everyone's been stuck at home, or many of us in the States have been stuck at home the last few months. So digital consumption has been, for certain areas, news, video. I mean, ironically, I think music has been steady, but in general, it's been way up. And I'm reading reports of, people buying subscriptions that they're not even using. So I think it's been in, the silver lining of this, horrendous time we've been going through has been that there's been much more digital consumption and awareness of subscriptions. And I hope I would take that further and say maybe that means that, people's interest in new and different experiences with VR, with XR, would be enhanced, and so that to me is what I'm saying. I mean, I would point you to there's been a couple of cool things on the music front outside of the stuff that's hitting all the headlines. This band Real Estate, which is kind of a tiny alternative band, has just done some of the coolest things with, like, AR implementations of a live tour that you can just get sitting up on your phone, and it looks like they're performing for you. There's a company called the Wave XR, which is out of Austin and LA, that I think came out of a crop of competitive music VR companies that were really trying to distinguish themselves. And they've taken this idea of a concert and kind of just changed it. They've got something with Imogen Heap, who's a very progressive artist out of the UK, that kind of totally twists the idea of a live music performance and breaks the artist up into lots of pieces. It's just wonderful from an imaging perspective. So I think the silver lining is that you're going to get more just awareness of these new types of experiences, and I think it's a more legitimate time than ever to think about the evolution of VR in some of these core entertainment businesses.
But you had posed a question earlier. So which big tech titan do you think is likeliest to bring VR to the masses? Between Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon?
Well, I mean, I'd love to maybe ask our audience that and hear what people say, but I kind of mentioned it earlier. A lot of my background's in digital music, and even with all the streaming wars and great services like Spotify and Amazon's doing some wonderful things with the Echo that people aren't always recognizing. I still think Apple has got a great track record of bringing some of these edgy new businesses to the market, basically. So I would probably look to them. That's just me, be interesting to hear what others, my fellow panelists, have to say as well.
Ago, and they did all sorts of real cool gamification on the one hand through the app, as well as expanded the brand through live VR. And so I really see applications there for both sports as well as gaming and music. So any thoughts there? You'll excuse me if I keep popping out, but this is such the nature of 2D, and hence one of the reasons why I think that 3D is so much more fun.
Was that question to me? Sorry, I just heard the very end. You just came in at the very end there, Catherine. I can't hear anybody right now. If anyone's saying anything, I can see Seth's nice smile.
Yeah, it's good to see. I can hear you, but I think we've lost Catherine just due to bandwidth. And I was same exact reaction to her question. I wasn't sure if it was for you or for me.
Yeah, I wish I had a fern in my background. We could be between two ferns right now.
There you go. Where are you? You're in Seattle, right?
Vancouver. Yeah. Yeah, so just north, not too far, but nice little day on the West Coast, man. You're down in LA?
Beautiful city up there. I am,
man.
Santa Monica. It's a beautiful city, Vancouver. I think we're on live, but hopefully we'll edit this. But I was planning to come up for the first VR, or the one last year, but we had fires here in LA. So.
Oh yeah, totally, man. Yeah, no, that was a great event. I went to spoke. I hosted the second day at the event. Very, very cool. Very fun event. It's
right.
It's different being online this year, but I've enjoyed a lot of the talks so far for sure. But miss seeing some key people that normally come to these events for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's see if we get Catherine back on. I'll put it on mute here for a second here.
Yeah. You look in this shot, in this angle, Seth, man, you look just like Kevin O'Leary. Have you ever seen Dragon's Den? You look younger than him, but you look like Kevin O'Leary, man.
That's good to hear. I usually get what do I get? I get Jeff Zucker or Ari Fleischer. The guy used to be the press secretary, whatever. So
nice.
All right. Let's see here. I'm going to go on. I don't know if.
Hello.
What's happening? I like your roof, by the way, in the background, man. That's a sweet backdrop.
Well, that's the houses in Amsterdam. I live in a house that was built in 1624, and
Nice. Wow.
all the houses are like this, and so I live on a duplex apartment on the top floor of that building, and this is the standard top floor type of room in Amsterdam. So yeah, it's cool.
Wow.
Cool.
But Vancouver,
Almost 400 years almost. That's a pretty old
yeah,
house.
yeah, and my street is the first street. Oh, here's Catherine back.
Hi. Yeah. I mean, we don't know how long this is going to last, but I'm really hoping you've had a great conversation. It's really awkward these days to try to host things from a distance, but I'm really glad everyone's been a good sport. And I hope that there are still people out there who have been viewing this, because I know that you're all really fascinating. And I'm sorry I missed part of your story. So please continue. I'll jump in a minute.
Well, Tyler hasn't spoken really yet. Maybe we should give him the floor.
Sure. Yeah. We were just kind of bantering back.
So
and
did
forth.
we talk about our plans going forward? I mean, sports, Tyler, they expect $22 billion for revenues, broadcasting revenues in 2020 here in the United States. That's clearly not going to be the final number, I'm certain. So how are we going to recuperate some of those expenses, given the continued expectation of disruption over time? I mean, are you guys seeing an actual commitment to change and innovation with the companies you're talking with? And if so, what kind?
I mean, I definitely think there's a change to the innovation. I think one thing that sports bring, similar to music, and film, is that it's a congregation of passion and people, right? That come, and it's the eyeballs and the demographic of those eyeballs that essentially generate the business on the back end. So with sports and the current challenges we're having right now, I'd say it's kind of a couple phases. You've got teams that have dabbled in it on an experiential standpoint before. Maybe it's one or two kind of cool elements that they've rolled out, and you can be immersed in it and really take part, which I think is really cool and groundbreaking and steps forward. But I think kind of the way forward is a more business approach to it, where that would be part of it. But there's a lot of other elements of the business right now. When you're talking about going to a festival where there's, whether it be concessions or merchandise or how you get in a frictionless fashion, it's all going to pull into one thing. And Seth even talked about earlier the cost of some of these things, and necessarily how they're rolled out moving forward with a bigger strategy. And I think that's the main thing, right? Like, you're going to see these experiences being pulled in to the core operating system and being part of a more omni-channel business, where this is the reach out there to pull people in and interact with that younger demographic. But and that's a good thing. So I think we're advancing from the flash in the pan to being a little more serious with offers for partners to take part in as well. I think we lost the host. I can keep talking.
Yeah, please do. I mean, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
there we go. I was going to say, are you with maybe the sports club? It'd be good to get some background
Sure.
on, like, the sports ecosystem you're part of. It's exciting.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm currently working on a club with them in Major League Soccer, so the Vancouver Whitecaps FC, director of strategic partnerships and innovation. I got into the VR space probably 4 or 5 years ago. Back then, I was actually with a different club in the CFL. Which is kind of like our version of the NFL here in Canada. And we dabbled into a live push of 360 viewing to complement broadcast, and we paired it up with geolocated missions, which was kind of my first jump into the space, creating something. And it was pretty cool. We attracted a younger demographic. That was back in like 2016, we rolled it out. And we literally sent a videographer with the club, and it was in the locker room, in the huddle, touchdown celebrations, all these things, and we were pushing 360 to complement the broadcast. So when timeouts were on, and when there was stoppage and play, moments broadcast couldn't show, that was my gray area in the contract to go in and provide more up close value for people that either had tickets or didn't have tickets. And the geolocated kind of Pokemon Go portion was kind of cool. We brought the heroes and figures into people's households, and we had blimps and drones ripping around the stadium that you interacted with, and
I love it.
Got to have different discounts, and it worked. And that kind of got me really into the space, seeing, wow, there's a definite business perspective from this. And, we sold the companies like 7-Eleven who hadn't touched the club prior. And, they rolled out a very similar thing the next year with the movie Deadpool. Having geolocated missions with finding the character actually go to the 7-Eleven and take part and go in for a discount and a redemption right on the spot. So you see things like that and how it can rope in a fan base to an event at a centralized location and also spread out across as far as, you look at some of the biggest clubs in the world, their reach is global. So how can a brand advocate become someone who can, take out their hard-earned cash or spend some of their precious time consuming with the club? And these mediums are very rich with that. So I think there's kind of two phases. There's one that's going to be to the end user as a fan, and then you're looking at an enterprise solution from a training standpoint and a development standpoint where you can really use this technology. Say in our case, where we have facilities across Canada, 24 of them with 40,000 plus kids. And they all want to make it to here in Vancouver at our training facility, which isn't always the easiest when you have, all sorts of costs and travel restrictions in place. Bringing, almost an enterprise solution like a company would have with training, them the ability to hear our coach and hear our players, I think is something you'll see more teams do as well, which again is going to be marketable. People sell training facilities, naming rights, people sell the kits, and all these types of experience will now generate content that will ever be leveraged on the other end for them to share and showcase, because everyone wants stuff outside of those games, which we're talking about now. We're on lockout. We don't have games. So we've all pivoted to content, and it's just about being robust moving forward and growing each year. And sports teams are learning that right now for sure.
Tyler, I think that's a great point. I mean, not only just is really about providing access, right? Because the content isn't necessarily the game itself. It's all that behind the scenes stuff. It's stuff that you wouldn't have access to as an average person. Before, you'd have to get some super extra VIP pass and you'd have to travel great miles and at great expense. And here you are proposing that there's this whole different dimension that's untapped, that's going to happen anyway. So in terms of, you don't require lots of motion capture rigging necessarily, although once you do it, it is an asset, it's an investment. But equally, just being able to enter the locker rooms or to work out with these guys would be a tremendous asset of value that people would pay for. I think that's a really clever idea. Tell us about some of the other ideas that you had for monetizing potentially some of these content behind the scenes that other people wouldn't necessarily have access to in the sporting world, and maybe other sports this could apply to.
I think it's just I understand the question. It's so there's lots of ways. I mean, with esports right now, we've pivoted with the content. We talked a little bit about gaming platforms earlier and utilizing those in a concert. So we're taking, instead of a concert, we're having our MLS gamer, which is our pro gamer. So in Major League Soccer, every single club has an actual professional esports player that plays a FIFA game, and we play against other clubs. So we're taking gaming platform, which is essentially this case, it's our bread and butter, it's our actual footy game. And we've started making real life elements that would happen on broadcast and in life happen on game. So we go through, we play a game, we have our starting 11, we have all these different elements that are normally paid for that we're literally layering into this broadcast, and sponsors are paying for it, and we're rolling it out. We're building kind of another set of assets, right? And I think when you look at this, there's lots of flash in the pan and really cool companies looking for POC out there. And man, they can get it easily by going to a team and allowing them to do something that's different. They can sell to a sponsor and generate some sort of ROI, but it's got to be bigger than that flash in the pan, which is why these content pieces with VR are really cool if you have that long-term vision, kind of, like how Michelle was talking earlier about the Venice Film Festival and that island they created and that yearly thing that people want to go to. There's all those outside elements that VR is like one little part of, right? And at the end of the day, no one's going to put a headset on for hours if it's just putting a headset on and see something cool. They got to be part of a fabric and a tribe and a culture.
Exactly. And I think that goes back to Seth's point about these different spaces where people can be found. And I think that as these platforms emerge, people will start to realize where those demographics live. But equally, to your point, and I think it's a very valuable one, Tyler, is that this is about finding, creating what I call a virtualization strategy. Because I work a lot with clients who will say, I want what they have. And it's almost like this kid at school, they see some fancy sneakers and you go, those sneakers don't suit you, or they're too big or whatever. And you say you're a runner, and that person, is playing golf. So you have to really think about what really suits, and what's that long-term architecture looks like. To Michelle's earlier point, gentlemen, one thing we didn't cover, and I really want to get your perspective. We all want to talk about bringing people to the experience virtually. We haven't talked about, like the MSG Spheres project, or some of the location-based entertainment that we see everywhere from Paris with the Atelier de Lumière to the United States, where we've seen Artec House in Miami and New York and Washington, D.C. as a cultural center using lots of different XR. And Area 15, which is going to be one of the biggest XR multi-entertainment centers. And that is going to be a combination of many things. Do you see still an opportunity there? I mean, looking at Disney and theme parks, it feels like there's still a future for that. And that could be everything from culture to sports to music. How do you feel about these venues going forward? Any thoughts? Seth, start with you.
I'll just raise one point, because we are looking into this, and which is a direct consequence of the COVID crisis, is the issue of hygiene. How do you, in location-based entertainment, if you're asking people to don headsets, one person after the other, you want to make sure that those headsets are sterilized. And right now,
Cleanbox technology has solved that. Have you seen Cleanbox?
No. Cleanbox is not ready. I mean, Cleanbox is a system that is designed to sterilize surgical equipment, right? Surgical tools that are made of metal with very single shapes. The problem with sterilizing headsets, it seems to be that the headsets is made of many plastic pieces and foam pieces, and with crevices and all kinds of things. And because we were considering buying the Cleanbox, and we read something that said basically it cannot guarantee 100% sterilization.
I heard like 99%, so maybe it's different, because I've seen recent demos, but I'll take your word for it for now. That's an issue.
No. But all I'm saying is that this is a new issue, and it's a major one. I think a major concern for LBEs.
Right.
And but once that is solved, and it will be solved, of course, I think having premium experiences in location-based entertainment facilities will remain a key factor of development of our industry.
It could also be something that's moving. I mean, in the sense that once you have all the equipment, whether you license it or you buy it, but it can actually go from city to city. It can go across countries. But some of these art tech houses, or these art spaces or interactive spaces like Area 15, are going to have, as I said, XR, so it would be wall projections. It could be, part performance, like Meow Wolf, or it could be sports and entertainment. Have you guys, like MSG has this gaming thing? It's a dome that is one of the most exciting things I've ever demoed in my life, and I'm not a gamer. So have you guys tried any of these things? Is there anything that excites you?
Well,
Seth?
we've been, in LA, we have something in downtown LA, our arts district, called 2-Bit Circus. And I'm glad Michelle, responded before I did, because I think, that question about hygiene, I'm not, I don't have expertise in that to professional degree, so I can't really speak about that, but that's certainly a really, really critical issue. But if I can kind of put the COVID-19 thing aside for a second, I mean, the LBE, the locations I've seen, I mean, those things are the real deal in terms of like the experience as well as the business model. I know, just taking my kids to 2-Bit Circus, I dropped several $100 really, really quickly on different forms of a la carte entertainment for them mostly, as well as how to drink myself, because there's a lot of other ways to entertain. And there were also, if I recall, kind of collaborative projection-based, gaming experiences with other people. So that made a really big difference on me, just in terms of impact on my thinking, in terms of, where these areas of XR, VR entertainment are viable. And yeah, I think once we get through probably those very critical questions about the pandemic and making them sterile and, clean and safe, we've got a friend, Joanna Popper, who's in it, who has specialized in location-based entertainment. And I know how bullish she and HP is on the area. And I think I think that's one of the real areas to look at that are super promising. So I'm bullish on it.
HTC has also been really active in this space, and I think one of the things, the models they've been looking at is really Asia. I mean, Japan has for a very long time had very successful arcades. I think China is really starting to take off because it becomes a community event as opposed to the isolation factor that so many people speak to when they talk about VR. And even with the inside out technology with Pico and other headsets, that's great. You get a sense that other people are there, but this is a nice combination of being able to do things with groups as well. Tyler, I wanted to talk to you about sports. I don't know if you've had any experience with XR gaming, especially this MSG Sphere that's being planned outside Las Vegas or any other similar group events. But do you have any thoughts on the evolution of that for sporting and gaming?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate being the chairman of the committee for VRAR sports and esports. I get to see some really cool presentations every other week. And I've seen all kinds of things from computer learning, where they're literally digitizing what it would feel like to be dunked on by Michael Jordan is one of the examples that they've built, that you can walk around the court and see what it feels like to see that speed and athleticism move and look into the crowd. So they're recreating these moments. And you've got everything from something so simple to things like that. But I think the main thing to keep in mind with sports is, kind of rule of thumb, the main thing's the main thing. So whatever you see moving forward is going to be part of that main thing. So if it's a really crazy experience like that you want to have, maybe it's pregame or half or post. Maybe it's something where you're going in and it's immersed and you're now getting a free kick, and you put a headset on and your heartbeat's flying. You hear the crowd go. You're in some space that's really like, Cirque du Soleil meets like XR, and you're feeling it, man. And your hairs rise on your arm. And this is something that you can do when you leave, and you go, oh man, that's an appreciation for the event and the athleticism and the pressure these people go through. So feeling pressure, that could be something that you could do with this experience. And you can even sell to a corporate. Maybe now the corporate comes pre and they're trying to deal with pressure in tight situations. And this is something they do with a ticketing, one goes out and sells this to the corporate world, and they fill a pregame. Now that's part of your business that's layered in, right? So you got to look at it as all part of it going back.
Why not? I actually have to tell you, I did go for this MSG thing, and it was in Manhattan, and they invited us to a theater, and I had no idea what to expect. And we were doing this just against a curved screen. So it wasn't the entire space, but I've been to like the planetarium, so I get where this is going. And we were just separated into small groups. So it was a yellow group, and you felt like there was this hive mentality that started to kick in. We could see each one of our teams, the 4 teams or 6 teams or whatever it was, compete against the screen, and we could see some of our members get shot out. And people would literally stand up and like scream at other people. They got so moved by this. And these were groups of strangers, by the way. But it was such a sense of adrenaline and excitement. And I'm not a gamer. And so if I got this much into it, it wasn't me who was standing up and screaming. But Tyler, to your point, it can be really, really riveting stuff. And I can see it being applied to your point, to getting people revved up for the next sales meeting, to really just doing really cool competitive sports and getting, or even like, having to answer things, maybe it could be intellectual or some sort of trivia game. Who knows? I just think that there are some really exciting opportunities. One thing, Michelle, we were talking about silver linings. I'd like to get your silver lining from these past couple of months. Is there something that you say, we walked away from this and we think, well, at least we got this, something good came out of it? Any thoughts about silver linings?
Well, the major silver lining of all this is really making us all fully appreciate the value of real life interaction, and by consequence, and social interaction. So by consequence of that, it really made me question, where does VR stand in comparison to this need? I mean, we're social animals, as we know, and we need this physical dimension in our lives, and we've been missing it in this lockdown. So it really rose the question for me, so what's the point of VR? And I really completely realized that if you look at VR as an entertainment, whether it's for sports or for knowledge or for pure entertainment, it provides something that physical reality cannot provide. So it's another reality, it's another experience that's very full. But I've been having these discussions with social platforms, about what it is they do, and I've been struck by the fact that a lot of people who are not in the business, directly in the business of VR, are very fearful of those social platforms because they see them as a proposition to replace direct interaction in the physical world. And I came to realize that it wasn't about that. It is the next best thing after reality, when you cannot have physical reality like we had in the lockdown, or when you're separated, from the people you love or your friends. So this notion that VR is actually enriching our experience, and making it a fuller option, so that when you're not able in a position to be physically present to one another, then VR comes in and is really the next best thing. So that sort of multi-layering of our reality, of our experience of reality, has become something even more exciting than before, because it can live side by side with this idea that yes, we want to be physically together.
So basically, the takeaway is that, or the silver lining of all of this is that we appreciate our real reality that much more. One last thing, Tyler, have you got a silver lining to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think in terms of how business moves forward with utilizing this technology and creating more assets for partners to interact with, which is the silver lining of that is not having games and figuring out how they can deliver value to fulfill contracts. So a lot of these companies have taken on other forms where they're doing different things to generate impressions, and it's working to a certain degree. So you take a look at that, and now you look at the business moving forward, and companies will invest in things that will add to the bottom line. And this has been one of those things, kind of a watershed moment in many respects for maybe elder stakes people, or not elder stakes people, but the way things have been done for a long time in sports, starting to crack a bit. You're not going to get the hot dog passed down the whole line to you maybe next time you go. So how's that going to be different? Are you going to order it with some, I talk about frictionless experiences, and you look at other revenue generators for the club and how that could generate, additional revenue with new investments in technology like AR and VR. And then now you've got those systems. How can they work for a fan experience? So you're taking, budget from a number of different mediums that will generate revenue and create a better experience for the fan. And you're giving it an engine to move forward and create an endless amount of these experiences. So you eliminate the high cost flash in the pan, and it's done in a season.
Excellent. So we're accelerating innovation, and we are learning to enjoy real life more. I would like to thank my panelists today, Seth Schachner, Michel Raylac, and Tyler Wilson. And my name's Catherine Henry. We're delighted to have been able to join you here at the VRAR Global Summit. Despite some of our tech challenges, I think it's been a fascinating discussion. And I thank you all for joining us on this program. And gentlemen, I wish you continued health and good luck with all of your endeavors. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Great talk with everyone.
All the best, everyone.
Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you.